The rain was relentless, hammering against the roof and running in heavy streams down the windows. Inside, the small house felt like a fragile refuge against the storm outside. Daniel, a single father, had just tucked his little daughter, Emily, into bed when a sudden knock echoed at the front door. It was sharp, urgent, like someone desperate to be heard. Emily clutched her teddy bear tighter and peeked out from her room, her big eyes wide with fear. Daniel hesitated for a moment, sensing that whatever waited on the other side of the door was not good news. Slowly, he turned the knob and pulled it open. There she was, his ex-wife, soaked from head to toe, her red dress clinging to her like a second skin. The street lamp behind her cast a cold glow on her face, and her arms were crossed tightly against her chest. She didn't look like someone seeking shelter. She looked like someone bringing a storm of her own. Emily's small voice broke the silence. "Daddy, who is it?" Daniel swallowed hard, his heart racing. The last person he expected to see tonight was standing right there, in the rain. The woman who had left them. The woman who had shattered his trust. And yet, here she was. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe to this channel. It helps us bring more stories like this one to life, stories that touch the heart and remind us of the strength of family. Now, let's return to Daniel's doorstep, where one single sentence was about to turn his world upside down. Daniel's hand tightened on the doorframe as memories he thought he had buried came rushing back. The sight of his ex-wife standing there was like a trigger pulling open old wounds. For a moment, he wasn't in the present anymore. He was back in those days when everything had fallen apart. 2 years earlier, life had been very different. The house had been filled with laughter, warm dinners, and promises of forever. But behind closed doors, arguments had become routine. Harsh words replaced tenderness, and silence stretched longer than conversations. Daniel had tried God. He had tried to hold the family together. But love, once broken, is hard to repair. One night, she packed her bags and left. She didn't just leave him, she left Emily too, a little girl who had stood at the window for hours, clutching her teddy bear, waiting for a mother who never came back. From that moment on, Daniel was both father and mother, protector and comforter. He worked 2 jobs, sacrificed sleep, and carried the weight of the world just to make sure Emily never felt unloved. Neighbors whispered, some calling him strong, others saying he was foolish to keep hoping she might return. But Daniel never looked for sympathy. His only focus was Emily, her laughter after school, her drawings on the fridge, her tiny arms wrapping around his neck at night. Those were the things that kept him going. Now, with the storm outside and his ex-wife standing there, those sacrifices felt like they were being tested. The woman who had walked away was back, and the fear inside him whispered, what if she tries to take Emily away this time? Daniel took a slow breath, trying to ground himself. He glanced back at Emily, who peeked nervously from behind the doorframe. Her trust, her safety, her little world depended entirely on him. And he knew whatever this unexpected visit meant, it could change everything. The storm outside seemed to grow louder as Daniel faced the woman who once shared his life. She didn't step inside, didn't ask to dry off, didn't even greet her daughter. Her eyes were cold, sharp, and unflinching. She had come with a purpose. Daniel, she said firmly, her voice cutting through the sound of the rain, I want Emily back. I want custody. The words hit him like a punch to the chest. For a moment, Daniel couldn't breathe. He glanced back at Emily, who was holding her teddy bear so tightly, it looked like she might crush it. Her lips parted, confusion and fear filling her eyes. Daniel stepped out onto the porch, pulling the door almost shut behind him to shield Emily from the rising tension. His clothes were quickly soaked by the rain, but he didn't care. All he could hear was the echo of her words. I want custody. You left, he said, his voice low but steady. You walked out on her, on us. Do you remember that night? Do you remember the tears, the begging, the silence you left behind? She crossed her arms tighter, her jaw clenched. Things are different now. I'm her mother. She belongs with me. Daniel felt rage boiling under his skin, but he forced himself to stay calm. Losing control was exactly what she might want. You don't get to walk back into her life like nothing happened. She's not some possession you can claim when it suits you. Emily is my daughter too, and I've been here every single day. The woman's eyes flickered, but she didn't back down. If you won't agree, I'll take this to court. And you know as well as I do that a child needs her mother. Judges see it that way too. Daniel's stomach turned cold. The storm wasn't just outside, it was inside him now, threatening to break him apart. The thought of losing Emily, of her being forced into the arms of someone who had abandoned her, was unbearable. And yet, that was the reality he suddenly faced. Behind the door, Emily whispered softly, her voice trembling as she called out, "Daddy, what's happening?" Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. He couldn't let her see him break. He couldn't let her know that tonight might be the beginning of the hardest fight of his life. Daniel stood on the porch, the cold rain dripping from his hair, his shirt clinging to his skin. Every instinct in his body screamed to fight back, to shout, to push this woman away from their lives once and for all. But then he heard Emily's muffled sob from behind the door, and he forced himself to swallow the storm raging inside him. His voice, though strained, remained steady. You think you can walk back into her life and just claim her? Emily doesn't even know you anymore. She's built her world around stability, around trust, around me. His ex-wife tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. Children adapt. She remember. She forgive. Daniel's hands curled into fists at his sides. Forgive? That single word cut deeper than any other. Forgiveness wasn't something you could demand. It was something you earned slowly, painfully. And she hadn't even tried. He thought of the sleepless nights rocking Emily back to bed after nightmares. The rushed breakfast before school, the scraped knees, the bedtime stories. Every moment was proof of his love, his sacrifice. Yet now, it all felt like it was hanging by a thread that she could snap with a single decision from a judge. Inside, Emily's small shadow moved against the curtains. Daniel knew she was listening, scared, her world suddenly fragile. That thought gave him strength. He couldn't crumble. Not here, not in front of her. Taking a deep breath, he lowered his tone. If you truly cared about Emily, you would think about what's best for her, not what's convenient for you. Don't pretend this is about her needs. This is about yours. Her eyes flickered with something anger, guilt, maybe even shame, but just as quickly, her expression hardened again. She was determined, and Daniel knew this wasn't a passing whim. She meant every word. As he stood there, drenched in rain, Daniel realized that the fight for his daughter's happiness had only just begun. And unlike the storms that eventually passed, this one promised to stay. Inside the warm but modest house, Emily pressed her tiny forehead against the cool glass of the window, watching the rain blur the world outside. She couldn't hear every word, but the sharp tones, the silences, and the way her father's shoulders tensed told her enough. Something bad was happening. She hugged her teddy bear tighter, burying her face against its worn fur. That bear had been with her since the night her mother left. Back then, it had soaked up countless tears as she whispered questions her father couldn't always answer. Questions like, why did Mommy leave? Or, did I do something wrong? Now, with her mother's sudden return, those questions rushed back like shadows creeping into the room. Emily was too young to understand custody battles or legal threats. What she did understand was love. She knew who tucked her in every night, who made her laugh when she was sad, who showed up to every school event no matter how tired he was. It was her dad. Always her dad. She tiptoed closer to the door, peeking through the small crack her father had left. The sight of her mother standing in the rain should have brought comfort, but instead it made her stomach twist. There was no warmth in her mother's eyes, only something cold, almost demanding. Emily's heart pounded. She feared being forced away from the safety of home, from the one person who had never let her down. In her little mind, One thought became crystal clear. What if Daddy can't stop her? What if I have to leave? A tear rolled down her cheek as she whispered to her teddy bear, "I don't want to go." From outside, her father's voice rose again firm, protective like a shield against the storm. And Emily clung to that sound with all her heart, silently praying that it would be enough to keep her world from falling apart. The rain poured harder, as if nature itself wanted to drown out their voices. But nothing could silence the storm building between Daniel and his ex-wife. For too long, words had been left unsaid, but now, under the weight of the night, they came spilling out like broken glass. "You abandoned us," Daniel said, his voice trembling with fury he could barely control. Emily cried herself to sleep for weeks. Do you have any idea what that does to a child? To wake up every morning asking if her mom is coming back, and every night realizing she isn't. His ex-wife flinched, but quickly masked it with defiance. "I had my reasons. You were never easy to live with. Always working, always too tired. You made me feel invisible in my own home." Daniel's chest tightened. Invisible? You had choices. You could have talked to me. You could have fought for us. Instead, you walked away from your daughter. "Don't you dare put that on me." Her eyes burned with resentment. "You think you're some saint because you stayed, because you played the hero? You don't know what it's like to feel trapped, suffocated." Daniel stepped closer, rain dripping from his brow, his voice lowering but cutting sharper than before. "I do know. I felt trapped too. Trapped between a crumbling marriage and a daughter who needed me more than anything. The difference is, I didn't run. I chose her." For the first time, her expression cracked. A shadow of guilt flickered in her eyes before she looked away, her jaw tightening. Inside the house, Emily could hear the raised voices, and each word felt like a dagger she didn't understand but could feel deeply. She pressed her hands over her ears, whispering to her teddy bear as tears slipped down her cheeks. The storm outside was fierce, but the storm inside their hearts was fiercer. Every bitter word was pulling them further apart, making reconciliation impossible. And yet, the one thing binding them together, their daughter was right inside, caught in the middle of a war she never asked for. Lightning split the sky, illuminating their faces for a brief, raw second. Daniel's jaw was clenched, his chest rising and falling heavily as if every breath cost him strength. His ex-wife, however, stood with an unsettling calm, as though she had prepared for this moment long before arriving at his door. "Enough," she said, her tone cold and deliberate. "You can cling to the past all you want, but it changes nothing. I've already spoken to a lawyer. If you won't let Emily come with me willingly, I'll make it official. I'll go to court and I'll win." The words sliced through Daniel like a blade. Court. The one place where truth could easily be twisted, where years of sacrifice could be overshadowed by a title mother. He knew the system was often unkind to fathers, no matter how devoted they were. And now that threat loomed over him like a guillotine. His voice cracked despite his effort to keep it strong. "You'd drag her through that. You'd make our daughter stand in the middle of a courtroom and be torn apart just so you can feel like you've won something?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm doing what's best for her." Daniel shook his head, disbelief written across his face. "No, you're doing what's best for you. Don't pretend this is about Emily's happiness. You left that behind the night you walked away." For a moment, silence filled the air, broken only by the pounding rain. But then, with an icy stare, she delivered the final blow. "You can't protect her from me forever. One way or another, Emily will come home with me." Daniel felt his stomach twist. His hands trembled at his sides as the storm inside him clashed with the storm around them. For the first time since she'd appeared at the door, the terrifying thought became real. This wasn't an argument. This was a battle. And battles had winners and losers. Inside the house, Emily sat curled up on the couch, clutching her teddy bear with white-knuckled hands. She didn't understand the words court or custody, but she understood enough to know someone wanted to take her away from Daddy. And that thought alone shattered her little heart. Daniel's chest burned as if the rain itself had turned into fire inside his lungs. Every muscle in his body screamed to fight, to shout, to slam the door and end this nightmare. But he couldn't not when every decision he made in this moment would shape Emily's future. His ex-wife's words echoed mercilessly. "I'll go to court. I'll win." He knew she wasn't bluffing. And that terrified him more than anything. For 2 years, Emily had been his entire world. He had given up promotions, abandoned dreams, and sacrificed his own needs just to make sure she felt safe, loved, and whole. Every bedtime story, every scraped knee bandage, every tear wiped away, it all built a life he thought was unshakable. But now, with just a few words, that life felt like it could crumble into dust. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, the rain dripping steadily from his face. His heart pounded in his ears, louder than the thunder rolling above them. He wanted to scream at her, to tell her she had no right. But deep inside, a gnawing fear whispered, "What if she does win? What if I lose her?" He glanced through the window and saw Emily's small silhouette on the couch, her head resting on her teddy bear. Even from a distance, he could see her trembling shoulders. That sight shattered him. His daughter, the little girl who trusted him more than anyone in the world, was scared, and he was the only one who could protect her. He clenched his fist, his body shaking. The thought of Emily being torn away, of her waking up in a house without him there to reassure her, was unbearable. Tears burned at the corners of his eyes, but he blinked them away. He couldn't let her see him break. Turning back to his ex-wife, his voice was low, raw, and trembling with contained fury. "You can try to take me to court. You can throw every threat at me, but hear this, Emily is my daughter too. I won't let you rip her away from the only stability she's ever known. If you want to fight, then you'll get one." For the first time, his ex-wife faltered. The certainty in her eyes flickered as she saw the fire in his, but the storm between them was far from over. In truth, it was only just beginning. The silence between them stretched, heavy and suffocating. The storm outside had slowed to a steady drizzle, but inside, the air still pulsed with tension. Daniel's chest rose and fell sharply, his words still hanging between them like a drawn blade. His ex-wife's eyes, once so certain, now darted away as though they could no longer carry the weight of her own demands. Finally, she exhaled shakily. Her voice dropped, losing some of its sharpness. "You think I came here just to hurt you? To rip Emily out of your arms?" Daniel's brow furrowed. "Isn't that exactly what you're doing?" She hesitated, her lips pressing together as if she were fighting an invisible battle inside herself. And then, for the first time that night, Daniel saw something flicker across her face sphere. I'm not doing well," she admitted, her words almost swallowed by the patter of the rain. "Things haven't gone the way I thought they would when I left. I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. And now I'm in trouble." Daniel's stomach twisted. He didn't trust her, not after everything. But the tremor in her voice was real. "What kind of trouble?" he asked, his tone sharp, suspicious. Her eyes filled with a desperate gleam. "The kind that doesn't go away. Debt. People I owe. People who don't forgive. I thought if I had Emily with me, maybe things would be different. Maybe they'd see I'm a mother trying to rebuild her life, and they'd back off." Daniel's blood ran cold. His worst fear wasn't just that she wanted custody. It was that she might drag Emily into her chaos, her darkness. His protective instincts roared inside him like a wildfire. "You mean to tell me," Daniel said slowly, his voice shaking with disbelief, "that you want to use our daughter as some kind of shield? That you risk her safety just to fix the mess you created?" Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't deny it. Her silence was answer enough. Daniel felt as if the ground beneath him had vanished. What he thought was simply a custody fight had just revealed something far more dangerous. And now, his greatest fear wasn't only losing Emily. It was that she might be dragged into a world she should never have to face. The living room was quiet, except for the faint ticking of the old clock on the wall. Daniel stood frozen, her confession still echoing in his head. He wanted to shield Emily from every word, every dark truth, but she had already seen too much. And then, before he could say anything, a small voice broke the silence. "I don't want to go." Daniel turned sharply. Emily was standing near the doorway, her teddy bear hanging limply in her hand, her cheeks streaked with tears. Her voice trembled, but her eyes wide, innocent, and filled with raw fear locked on her mother. The ex-wife blinked, caught off guard. "Emily?" She started softly, but her daughter's words cut her off. "You left me," Emily whispered, her little hands tightening on the teddy bear. "You didn't come back. Daddy was here." "Daddy stayed? I don't want to leave him." Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to rush to her, to scoop her up and shield her from this moment, but he knew these were Emily's words, her truth, and it needed to be heard. Her mother's lips trembled. "Sweetheart, I made mistakes, but I'm still your mom." Emily shook her head quickly, her eyes filling again with tears. "You didn't tuck me in. You didn't hold me when I was scared. You didn't come to my school plays? Daddy did. Daddy always does." The room went heavy with silence. The storm outside had eased into a soft drizzle, but the storm inside the house reached its peak. Daniel's heart ached as he watched his daughter, so small and yet so brave, speak words he never imagined she could. Each syllable was like a mirror, reflecting the truth no custody battle or courtroom could erase. Love isn't proven by titles or blood, it's proven by presence. Emily took a shaky step closer to her father, her tiny fingers wrapping around his hand. "I don't want to go anywhere. I want to stay here, with Daddy." And in that moment, Daniel realized that no matter what threats or battles awaited, Emily's voice was his greatest strength and his greatest weapon. Daniel knelt down beside Emily, wrapping an arm protectively around her as she clung to him, her small body trembling. He pressed his lips to the top of her head, feeling the weight of her words settle deep in his heart. She had spoken the truth neither of them could deny. Rising to his feet, Daniel turned to face his ex-wife. His eyes, once clouded with rage, now burned with something different clarity. "Do you hear her?" he said, his voice steady but sharp. "That's not me talking. That's not some legal argument. That's our daughter. And she's telling you what she wants." His ex-wife's expression faltered. She opened her mouth to argue, but no words came. Emily's voice still hung in the air, undeniable and pure. Daniel took a step closer, his tone shifting, not soft, but not merciless either. "You're right about one thing. You are her mother. And nothing will ever change that. But being her mother isn't about demanding or threatening. It's about showing up. It's about being there when she needs you. You left once. If you truly want to make things right, don't try to take her from me. Start by proving to her that you won't leave again." Tears welled in her eyes, and for the first time that night, the hard mask she wore began to crack. She looked at Emily, her daughter, clutching the teddy bear, pressed safely against her father's side, and a flash of shame crossed her face. Daniel's chest rose and fell slowly. He was exhausted, broken down by the night storm. But in that moment, he realized he wasn't powerless. His love for Emily gave him strength far greater than anger ever could. He extended a hand not in reconciliation, but in resolve. If you want to rebuild anything, start with honesty. Don't drag her into your problems. Don't use her as a shield. If you need help, say it. But know this, I will never, ever let you hurt her again. The room fell into silence, broken only by Emily's quiet breathing. For the first time since she arrived, Daniel's ex-wife looked less like an enemy and more like what she truly was, a flawed, desperate woman standing at the crossroads of redemption and ruin. The air in the room was heavy, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Daniel's words lingered like an open challenge, and for a long moment, his ex-wife just stood there, trembling, uncertain, her eyes darting between Daniel and Emily. At last, she let out a shaky sigh. I I don't know how to fix this, she admitted, her voice raw. I thought if I could bring her back with me, maybe everything else would fall into place, but I see now I was wrong. Emily doesn't need to be dragged into my mess. She needs stability. She needs you. Daniel felt a knot loosen in his chest, though his guard remained high. He searched her face, looking for sincerity, and for the first time in years, he saw it not pride, not anger, but regret. You can't undo the past, he said quietly, but you can decide what you do from here. Don't make promises to her that you can't keep. If you want to be in her life, then prove it. Visit, call, show up. But you don't get to tear her away from everything she knows just because you're scared of your own mistakes. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she nodded slowly. You're right, she whispered, her voice breaking. I don't deserve her trust yet, but maybe I can try to earn it. Emily's small voice, still fragile but full of hope, broke the silence. Can I still see you sometimes? Her mother's lips trembled as she crouched down, meeting her daughter's eyes. If you want that, sweetheart, then yes, but only when you're ready. And I'll be here. I'll wait, no matter how long it takes. Daniel watched the exchange, his heart heavy but relieved. This wasn't a perfect solution, but it was the right one. Emily would stay with him safe, loved, and secure. And maybe, just maybe, her mother could begin the slow path of redemption. With a deep breath, Daniel extended his hand toward his ex-wife once more, not as a sign of reconciliation, but as a boundary and a promise. Emily stays with me. But if you're serious about changing, I won't stop you from being part of her life. Just don't ever try to take her away again. For the first time that night, she nodded without argument. And in that moment, the decision was clear. Emily was staying home with her father. The night had grown quiet, the storm reduced to a gentle drizzle tapping against the windows. The house, once filled with tension and raised voices, now felt still fragile, as if everyone inside was afraid to breathe too loudly. Daniel's ex-wife stood in the doorway, her hair damp, her eyes swollen from tears. She looked smaller than she had when she first arrived, stripped of the pride and defiance that had fueled her demands. For the first time in years, she seemed human to him, not as the villain of his memories, but as a broken soul trying to piece herself back together. Emily clung to Daniel's leg, her teddy bear tucked under her arm. She looked at her mother with a mixture of sadness and relief, as if she understood, at least in part, that tonight was not about winning or losing, but about truth. Her mother crouched down, brushing a trembling hand over Emily's cheek. I love you, sweetheart. More than you'll ever know. I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry for everything. I promise I'll try to do better, even if it takes me the rest of my life. Emily didn't answer. Instead, she gave a tiny nod and pressed her teddy bear against her mother's hand before pulling back into her father's arms. It wasn't rejection. It was a child's way of saying she needed time. Tears streamed down her mother's face as she stood, giving Daniel a final look. It was heavy with regret, but also with something else, acceptance. Without another word, she stepped out into the night, the door closing softly behind her. Inside, Daniel knelt down to meet Emily's eyes. He brushed away her tears with gentle hands and whispered, "You're safe, you're home, and I'll never let you go." She buried her face into his chest, her small body relaxing for the first time that night. Daniel held her tight, knowing that in this embrace lay the only truth that mattered. The next morning, the world felt different. The storm had passed, leaving behind a sky streaked with golden light. Birds sang in the distance, and the air was fresh, as though the earth itself had been washed clean. Daniel sat on the porch with Emily curled against him, her teddy bear resting on her lap. She traced little circles on his hand, quiet but content. Looking out at the dawn, Daniel felt a strange peace. The battle wasn't truly over. There would still be challenges, moments of doubt, maybe even future confrontations. But last night had shown him something he'd always known deep down. He was enough. His love, his presence, his sacrifice, They were the anchor of Emily's world. He thought of his ex-wife, walking alone into an uncertain future. And though anger still lingered, so did something else compassion. Maybe she would change. Maybe she wouldn't. But either way, Daniel knew one thing for certain. Emily would not face those storms alone. The little girl looked up at him, her eyes sleepy but bright. "Daddy?" she whispered. "Yes, sweetheart. Promise you'll always stay?" Daniel smiled softly, kissing the top of her head. Always, no matter what. As the sun rose higher, painting the sky in warm colors, Daniel realized that while his world had nearly been shattered, it had also been rebuilt stronger than ever. Not by grand victories, but by a single truth. Love steadfast, patient, and unbreakable was what kept him whole. If this story touched your heart, imagine how many more lives we can impact together. Your like and subscription mean the world to us. They would allow us to keep creating stories that inspire, move, and remind us of the power of love and family. And who knows? With your support, maybe we can continue Daniel and Emily's journey and see what the future holds for them. So if you felt something tonight, take a second to like this video and subscribe. Together, let's make sure stories like this never end.